Before the earth ever turned, before oceans ever moved, before any human ever opened their eyes, there was heaven. A realm so perfect that no one questioned, no one doubted, no one dreamt of anything beyond God. It was a place where every sound was worship, every breath was harmony, and every being shone with a light that never faded. But then, something happened that heaven had never known. Not a storm, not a battle, a thought. It began inside one of the brightest among them, an angel admired, honored, and covered in beauty. An angel named Lucifer. He didn't roar, he didn't rage. He simply asked a question, silent, yet powerful enough to echo through eternity. Why must every throne belong to him? Why can't I rise higher? Why can't we decide our own glory? In that moment, heaven felt something it had never felt before. Uncertainty. Loyalty, once unquestioned, now wavered. Admiration turned into ambition. Worship turned into hunger. And without a single sword raised, the greatest war in existence had already begun, within the heart of an angel. What could make a third of heaven turn against the very Creator who formed them? What promise was whispered? What dream was offered? And how could perfect beings choose pride over paradise? This isn't just a tale of rebellion. It is the birth of pride, the fracture of love, and the moment when free will revealed its greatest cost. And the truth hidden in that rebellion still lives in every human choice we make today. You're watching Gospel Insights, where mysteries are not feared but faced. If you're ready to enter the untold story behind heaven's greatest heartbreak, remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon, because what comes next may change how you see good, evil, and your own heart. Before the first star burned in the universe, before a single mountain rose upon the earth, there was heaven, ancient, holy, and alive. Not a place of clouds and silence as we often imagine, but a realm of music and movement, where light itself danced and sang. Every breath within it echoed with purpose. Every being carried wonder. Nothing was broken. Nothing questioned. Harmony was more than a sound. It was existence itself. God dwelt there, not hidden on a distant throne, but moving among his creation with unsearchable majesty. His presence was not intimidating. It was overwhelming love. The angels did not love him because they feared him. They loved him because, in him, they found everything: identity, joy, fulfillment. His glory was not a distant blaze. It was like the warmth of a sunrise that every soul had waited for their entire being. Among the countless angels that filled heaven, one stood out, not as a rival, but as a masterpiece. Lucifer, the light-bearer, the one whose very name carried the glow of morning. He was adorned with magnificence, precious stones woven into his form by God's own hand. His voice was like layered choirs, capable of leading the entire host of heaven into worship without a single word of command. He was not only seen, he was felt. Other angels looked to him naturally, not because they bowed to him, but because his presence inspired them. He carried a kind of beauty that made others marvel at the creativity of God. If ever there was a portrait of loyalty, it was believed to be Lucifer. If ever there was one who would never stumble, it was him. Heaven had no memory of rebellion. No one had ever tried to rise above their place because every place was perfect. Angels did not dream of thrones. They lived in service, and service was joy. They did not compete, for there was nothing to win. They did not question, for there was nothing hidden. They had no fear, for there was nothing to lose. Yet for all its wonder, heaven possessed something profound: freedom. God, in his infinite love, never forced devotion. The angels were not programmed to worship. They had the power to choose. For ages beyond measure, that freedom was carried faithfully, until, within one heart, desire shifted. Lucifer did not fall because he was weak. He fell because he was powerful. Power, when separated from surrender, becomes hunger. And hunger, when fixed on self, becomes pride. Pride is unlike any other unseen force. It does not roar, it whispers. It does not strike, it waits. It does not break the rules. It asks gently if the rules should even exist. Lucifer, who once marveled at the glory of God, began to marvel at his own. He saw his beauty. He felt his influence. And slowly, silently, a thought formed. What if I could rise higher? What if worship could return to me? What if glory could be shared? No lightning announced the beginning of rebellion. No trumpet declared war. The greatest conflict in creation began in silence, within admiration that turned inward. In a place where no one had ever lied, the first lie was not spoken aloud. It was believed within. Everything that was once certain began to tremble. But here lies the mystery that demands we keep listening. How could a being who walked so closely to God ever turn from him? How could an angel who lived in perfection seek something beyond it? What promise, what dream could possibly draw 1/3 of heaven into darkness? This story is not merely about Lucifer. It is about the danger of self-exaltation, about love confronted by ambition, about the first fracture in eternity. And though it happened before time began, its echo has followed humanity ever since. In heaven, time did not move as it does on earth. There were no days to count, no nights to divide. Existence was an endless now, alive with purpose and filled with songs that rose like rivers of worship back to the Creator. The angels did not serve out of duty. They existed as praise. Harmony was not a sound they produced. It was the nature of their being. And in that endless harmony stood Lucifer. He was not merely admired. He was unforgettable, radiant, elegant, unmatched in wisdom and beauty. When he moved, light followed. When he spoke, it inspired. He was proof of God's craftsmanship, the highest note in heaven's symphony. Some angels believed he would forever be the unshakable example of faithfulness. But here is a truth as ancient as creation. The higher something is lifted, the further it can fall. It did not begin with hatred. Hatred had no place in him. It did not begin with anger. Anger had no soil in heaven. It began with something far more subtle: comparison. For the first time in all his existence, Lucifer looked upon his own reflection longer than he looked upon God. It was innocent at first, beauty admired, position recognized, honor acknowledged. But admiration twisted when it lost its anchor. Gratitude began to fade and comparison grew teeth. Why must every beam of worship return to him? Why must every eye look past me to him? If I reflect such glory, do I not possess some of it myself? He did not speak these questions, not even to himself, yet they remained. They lingered like smoke wrapping itself around thought. Heaven did not hear them, but heaven felt something it had never known: tension, vague and voiceless. Lucifer continued his duties. He continued to lead worship. Outwardly, nothing changed, but inwardly, worship was no longer surrender. It became performance, and performance always seeks an audience. Slowly, the songs that once rose to God now looped back inward, feeding something forming deep within him: self-worship. Here is the tragedy. Lucifer was not tempted by evil. Evil did not exist yet. He was tempted by his own greatness. He saw the gift and desired to become the giver. He saw the throne and imagined himself beside it, perhaps even on it. But even then, the fall was not inevitable. Pride could still be broken. In heaven, one turn back to humility could have restored all. Yet Lucifer chose silence. Silence in heaven is not peace. Silence, when truth should be spoken, becomes poison. Heaven had never seen deception before. But Lucifer had discovered its seed, a seed that whispered, "Do not reveal. Conceal." Alone in his thoughts, he rehearsed visions of exaltation. Not of kneeling, but of being knelt to. Not of leading worship to God, but of receiving worship from others. Over time, those visions transformed. They did not feel like rebellion. They felt like destiny. It did not matter that he was created. Pride never asks, "Where did I come from?" Pride asks, "Why am I not higher?" Lucifer's heart had shifted, not in shouting, in silence. And silence, when chained to pride, becomes a forge that shapes delusion. And yet, no angel suspected a thing. They still saw a leader, they still heard a voice of beauty, they still felt inspired. But slowly they were no longer being led to God. They were being led to admiration. Admiration of brilliance, admiration of charisma, admiration of self. What heaven did not realize was that admiration is a doorway, and Lucifer had already stepped through. He was no longer just the light bearer, he had become the question bearer. And that question would not remain his alone. Lucifer's thoughts began as a silent thunder, felt only by him, seen by no one. But pride, once born, refuses to live in solitude. It seeks agreement, it seeks reflection, it seeks an audience. He did not walk through heaven declaring rebellion. No. He moved quietly, gracefully, just as he always had. He smiled the same. His wings shimmered the same. But something had shifted, not in what he said, but in what he intended. At first he chose carefully whom to approach, not the wise, not the deeply rooted. He chose those who admired him most, those who already looked upon him with awe, who felt honored merely to be noticed by him. Angels who didn't yet know they were drifting. He did not speak against God. That would have shocked them. Instead, he asked questions that sounded innocent, curious, thoughtful. "Have you ever wondered," he began one day to a gathering of younger angels, "why we do not understand all things? Why we must sing only what is written and never compose our own songs?" Heaven had never questioned its order, but questions once heard are hard to unhear. "I have often thought," he said softly, as if confiding a secret, "that there is more to us than we know, that we have potential beyond what is seen. Is it wrong to wonder if our glory was meant for more?" He didn't accuse God of withholding. He simply implied that perhaps they had not yet reached the fullness of their destiny. No angel until then had wondered about destiny. God was destiny. His will was fulfillment. But now, something else shimmered in the air. Possibility. Heaven had known worship. Lucifer introduced ambition. And the angels listened, not because they doubted God, but because they trusted Lucifer. He had always led them closer to the throne. Why would he now lead them away? Admiration became agreement. Agreement became alignment. Alignment became allegiance. But it wasn't open allegiance. It was silent, subtle, the kind that grows only in the dark corners of the heart. Angels who once sang without hesitation began to pause inside. They still worshipped. But now a small part of them wondered, what if we are destined for more than worship? What if the throne is not a place to kneel before, but a place someone else might someday rise to? Lucifer's greatest weapon was not force. It was suggestion. He did not tear heaven apart with violence. He loosened it with whispers. Some angels walked away disturbed, troubled by the new feeling within them. Others stayed longer, drawn not by rebellion but by fascination. They felt as if they were discovering thoughts they never knew they possessed. But they were not discovering. They were receiving. Lucifer had learned to speak like revelation. He sounded enlightened, visionary, and slowly, angels began to share the same hunger he had birthed within himself. Why should we, who are glorious, remain forever beneath? Why must he alone remain above? Heaven was still shining. Heaven was still singing. Yet beneath the chorus, something had begun to crack. The war had not yet begun, but loyalty was beginning to tremble. The Creator, who sees thoughts as clearly as stars, knew. He heard the whispers that angels could not hear. He saw the shift in hearts before a single word was spoken against him. He could have ended it then. A word, a breath, and Lucifer would cease. But love does not enforce devotion. Love reveals truth, and truth tests loyalty. God remained silent, allowing choice to speak. Heaven had never seen a tremor, never felt a shift. But now something subtle, something nameless, drifted through the realm like a chill. Angels who once worshipped with perfect unity began to feel an invisible distance in the air. They still sang the same songs, raised the same voices, lifted the same wings. But something had changed within the harmony. It was no longer effortless. For the first time, there was effort. Lucifer's whispers had not grown louder, but they had grown deeper, threading themselves into the quiet corners of angelic thought. Questions once unthinkable became quietly entertained. Admiration for God remained, but alongside it, a faint sense of self had taken root. Not self-awareness, self-importance. Some angels attempted to quiet the unrest within themselves, dismissing it as nothing. Others tried to dismiss Lucifer's musings as creative thought. But thoughts once introduced cannot be erased. They must be confronted. Heaven, though still radiant, stood at the edge of something unknown, division. And then it happened. A group of angels, small in number but heavy in presence, were seen gathering more often around Lucifer. They spoke softly when others approached, and their eyes carried a different kind of fire. Not the blaze of worship, but the flicker of something private. The elders among the angels, those who stood ancient and silent near the throne, began to notice. They did not accuse. They did not panic. Heaven had no protocol for suspicion, but they observed, and in their silence, concern formed. One among them, a mighty angel named Michael, watched Lucifer differently than the others. He had fought beside him in countless moments of glory. He had trusted him, admired him. They were not rivals. They were brothers in leadership. And Michael, unlike the younger ones, had seen something change. He approached Lucifer, not as a judge but as a friend. "Brother," he said quietly, "your words carry more weight than you know. Some follow you with their eyes more than they follow the throne. Do not let admiration become an altar." Lucifer smiled, calm, composed, untouched. "I only seek to awaken what lies within us," he replied. "Is it wrong to believe we are capable of more than mere servanthood? I do not wish to challenge him. I only wish to rise closer to him." Michael felt a tremor in those words. Worship does not seek closeness through elevation, only through surrender. But Lucifer's tone was not of surrender, it was of ascension. "Be careful," Michael warned, "that you do not lead others to love you more than the one who made us." Lucifer's eyes, once soft with humility, now shimmered with something undefinable. "Can love not be shared?" he asked. That question left Michael in silence. And that is when heaven felt its first grief. For the first time in eternity, an angel looked at another angel with sorrow. The Creator was still silent, not absent, not indifferent. He allowed the question to rise to its full height, so that all heaven would see what pride fully matured becomes. The unthinkable was unfolding, not in violence, but in persuasion. Lucifer had not yet declared war, but war was no longer impossible. Something sacred had shifted. Truth was no longer unanimously loved. The stage was set. The silence before the storm was near its end. The fall of Lucifer was not just the fall of an angel. It was the unveiling of what free will truly costs. Heaven did not break because God was challenged. It trembled because love was refused. Lucifer, once the brightest, chose self over surrender, greatness over gratitude. And in that choice, he tore harmony and birthed war. 1/3 followed him, not because God failed to love them, but because pride taught them to love themselves more. They did not fall out of ignorance, they fell out of desire. A desire to be what they were only meant to reflect. God did not lose that day. Love was not defeated. In fact, love allowed the rebellion to rise, so all creation would see what happens when anything, even the highest being, tries to live without the one who gave it breath. Lucifer gained a throne, but lost heaven. He gained followers, but lost purpose. He gained a kingdom, but lost the king. And now his whispers continue, not with wings, but in hearts. That same voice that once echoed through heaven now asks humanity the same question it once asked the angels. Will you bow, or will you rise alone? Will you reflect, or will you replace? In the end, every soul faces the same choice Lucifer did, surrender or self, and that is why this story matters. It is not ancient, it is present, it is within us. Heaven's war did not begin with a sword, it began with a thought, and your greatest battles will too. If this journey moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes to the unseen battle behind every choice, stay with us. This is Gospel Insights, where we don't just tell stories, we uncover the eternal meaning within them. Make sure you like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss the truths that many never hear. Your soul deserves to know what eternity remembers.